My name is Alexandra Thompson. I'm 26. Last Tuesday at 9:47 a.m., I stood in courtroom 3B and watched my father point at me across 14 feet of polished maple while telling Judge Patricia Hendricks that I was too emotionally unstable to own the yoga studio I'd built from nothing, and that my brother Dylan, who'd never shown up once during the 3 years I spent renovating a gutted warehouse, deserved to take it from me because he had a real future ahead of him. The fluorescent lights made my father's silver watch catch and flash. He was wearing his Navy funeral suit, the same one he'd worn to Grandpa Harold's service 8 months ago. Dylan sat beside him in a pressed white shirt I recognized from my mother's Facebook photos, the ones where she captioned things like, "My successful son at his office." He wasn't even trying to hide his smile. "Your Honor," my father said, his voice steady and rehearsed, "Alexandra has always struggled with reality. The yoga studio and the truck, they're worth something now. Finally, they belong to Dylan, the boy who actually has what it takes to lead, who has a family, who has a real future." My lawyer, Patricia Chen, touched my wrist under the table. Don't react. I didn't. But my face burned so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and what time is it there. Let me take you back 4 years to the afternoon that changed everything. I was 22, working the closing shift at Chapter and Verse bookstore on Marlowe Street, reorganizing the self-help section for the third time that week because my manager, Craig, thought energetic displays increased customer engagement. It was 6:14 p.m. on a Thursday in October when my phone buzzed. Grandpa Harold. "Pumpkin, you busy?" I wedged the phone between my shoulder and ear, shelving a book about meditation. "Just stacking books. What's up?" "Come by the house tomorrow. Need to talk to you about something." His voice had that quality, warm but serious, the kind of tone that made you pay attention. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Just come by around noon. Bring your appetite. I'm making pot roast." The next day, I drove to his place on Sycamore Ridge, the white ranch house with the blue shutters and the vegetable garden he'd kept for 40 years. He was waiting on this porch, wearing his old flannel shirt and work boots, even though he'd retired from the mill a decade ago. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and slow-cooked beef. He sat me down at the kitchen table with the cracked formica top and poured me sweet tea in the mason jar I'd always used since I was 7. "You've always been the one who showed up, Pumpkin," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. "Dylan stopped visiting when he turned 16. Your parents come by twice a year, maybe. But you showed up every Sunday for 10 years, even when you were working 2 jobs. I stared at the envelope. It was thick, legal-sized, with his handwriting across the front, my name in blue ink. "I'm not gone yet," he said, smiling. "But when I am, this is for you. There's a property deed in there, old warehouse on the east side near the rail yard. Been sitting empty for 12 years. It's not much, barely worth the land it's on, but it's yours. Do something good with it." I opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten will, keys on a metal ring, and a property deed for 2847 Industrial Way. "Grandpa, I can't." "You can, and you will." He reached across and squeezed my hand. His fingers were rough, calloused from decades of work. "You've got something your brother doesn't. You finish what you start. I've watched you. You're going to build something beautiful, Pumpkin. I know it." I kept that envelope in my nightstand drawer for 2 years, while I worked my bookstore shifts and my 9-to-5 office job processing insurance claims at Meridian Solutions. I saved $11,400 in that time, every spare dollar. When Grandpa Harold passed away that February, peacefully in his sleep at 84, I went to the warehouse 3 days after the funeral. It was worse than I'd imagined. Water damage across the entire north wall, cracked concrete floors, exposed wiring hanging from the ceiling like dead vines. Pigeons had nested in the rafters for years. The smell alone made my eyes water. But there were windows, huge industrial windows facing east. Morning light poured through the grime, and I could see it. Yoga mats in rows, plants in the corners, Clean white walls, people breathing together in silence. I worked on that building for 8 months while keeping both my jobs. I hired a contractor named Luis Herrera who gave me a fair price because, as he said, I like people who aren't afraid of sweat. I installed new flooring. I painted every wall myself, 3 coats of warm cream. I bought secondhand mirrors from a dance studio that was closing. I found mats and bolsters on sale, bought them in bulk with my credit card. I got my yoga certification online through a program that cost $800. I studied after my office shifts, practiced in the empty warehouse at night under construction lights. The delivery truck came 4 months in. A 1998 Ford with 140,000 miles that I bought for $3,200 from a guy selling it on Craigslist. It needed new brakes and a transmission flush, which cost another $900. But it ran, and it had enough space in the back for mats, bolsters, and equipment deliveries. I named the studio Eastlight Yoga. I opened in November with $340 in my business checking account and 3 students who'd found me through a flyer I'd posted at the community center. Within 6 months, I had 40 regular students. Within a year, I'd quit both my other jobs and was teaching 5 classes a day, 6 days a week. I handled all the marketing myself: social media posts, email newsletters, partnerships with local wellness businesses. I tracked every dollar in spreadsheets, reinvested every profit into better equipment, sound systems, aromatherapy diffusers. By year 2, I doubled my revenue. I hired 2 part-time instructors. I added evening meditation sessions and weekend workshops. The warehouse that had been barely worth the land was now pulling in $8,000 a month. Dylan didn't visit once during construction, not once during the first year of operation. My parents came to the grand opening, stayed for 20 minutes, and left before the first class started. My mother said the warehouse district made her nervous, but Grandpa Harold had known. Somehow he'd known exactly who deserved it. The first betrayal came on a Wednesday morning in March, 3 years after I'd opened. I was setting up for the 6 a.m. class when my phone rang. Dylan, we hadn't spoken in 4 months. Hey, Alex, got a minute? I wedged the phone between my shoulder and ear, unrolling mats. Kind of busy. What's up? I've been thinking about Grandpa's warehouse, the studio. Something in his tone made me stop moving. What about it? Well, we had an agreement, didn't we? When Grandpa gave you the property, you said we'd share it once it became profitable, 50-50. My stomach dropped. I never said that. You did, though. I remember it clearly. Mom and Dad remember it, too. We talked about it at Grandpa's funeral. You said you'd cut me in once the business took off. Dylan, that never happened. Look, I'm not trying to fight. I just think it's fair. You've done great work, but I've got ideas for expansion, marketing strategies. We could turn this into a real franchise operation. I've got the business degree. You've got the yoga knowledge. We'd be a good team. My hands started shaking. This is my business. Grandpa left it to me. Grandpa left you a rotting warehouse. I'm talking about what it is now, what we built together. We didn't build anything together. You were never here. His voice changed, got quieter, sharper. That's really how you want to play this? After everything our family's done for you? What are you talking about? I'll be in touch, he said, and hung up. I stood there in the empty studio, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. The morning light was coming through the eastern windows, hitting the mirrors, making everything too bright. My first student arrived at 5:55 a.m. I taught the class. I smiled. I adjusted postures and played calming music and pretended my brother hadn't just tried to claim ownership of the only thing I'd ever built for myself. 3 days later, I got a letter from his attorney, a man named Gregory Paulson with an office downtown on Marshall Avenue. The letter stated that Dylan Thompson was filing a petition for partial ownership of Eastlight Yoga based on a verbal agreement made between siblings in February, 3 years prior, during the bereavement period following their grandfather's death. It cited emotional duress, family understanding, and shared inheritance expectations. It demanded 50% ownership and access to all financial records. I read it sitting on my apartment floor at 11 p.m., still in my yoga pants from teaching. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. I called my parents the next morning. Mom, did you tell Dylan I promised to share the studio with him? There was a pause, background noise, the television, my father's voice asking who was calling. Well, honey, you did say something like that, didn't you? At the funeral? We all remember it. I never said that. I would never say that. Alexandra, you were very upset that day. You might not remember everything clearly. Dylan remembers. Your father remembers. We all heard you. My face burned. Mom, that's not true. Sweetheart, why are you being so difficult about this? Dylan just wants to help. He has good ideas for the business. You've always been a bit overwhelmed by details. This could be good for you. It's my business. It was Grandpa's warehouse, family property. You're not the only one who deserves something from his estate. Grandpa gave it to me specifically. There's a will. Wills can be complicated, honey, especially when there are verbal agreements involved. Your father and I think you should work with Dylan on this. It's not healthy to be so isolated all the time. You need family support. I'm not isolated. I run a successful business. That's wonderful, dear. But you know how you get sometimes. A little too intense, a little too focused. We just worry about you. I hung up before she could finish. My hands were shaking so hard, I dropped the phone twice trying to set it on the counter. That evening, Dylan showed up at the studio during my 7 p.m. class. He walked right in, stood in the doorway, and waited until I noticed him. 15 students on their mats, soft music playing, lavender in the diffuser. I paused the class. Can I help you? Just wanted to see the place, he said, looking around like he was assessing real estate. Looks good. You've done nice work with Grandpa's building. My student Sarah, a regular who came 3 times a week, looked uncomfortable. Dylan smiled at her. Sorry to interrupt. I'm Alexandra's brother. Family business. I walked over to him, keeping my voice low. You need to leave. It's half mine, isn't it? According to our agreement. There was no agreement. Mom and Dad say otherwise. That's 2 witnesses against 1, Alex. Plus, I've got a lawyer who thinks this is pretty straightforward. And he looked past me at the students. Seems like you've built something profitable here. That's great. Really. I'm proud of you. But you're not a business person. You're going to need help scaling this. Something inside me clicked. Not anger. Something colder. Get out, I said. He held up his hands in mock surrender. Okay, I'm going. But think about it, Alex. This doesn't have to be a fight. We can work together. You're not the victim here. You're just being stubborn. He left. I went back to teaching. But 3 of my students left early. Sarah stayed afterward. Are you okay? She asked. I told her I was fine. I always told everyone I was fine. The rumors started 2 weeks later. I found out when one of my instructors, Maya Chen, pulled me aside after class. Alex, I need to tell you something. I heard from a friend who works at the coffee shop on Brennan Street. Apparently people are saying you forged your grandfather's will. That your family is contesting ownership of the studio. My stomach turned to ice. Who's saying that? I don't know, it's just going around. I wanted you to know. I checked my business email that night. 3 class cancellations. No explanations. Over the next month, I lost 12 regular students. My revenue dropped by $2,000. People stopped referring their friends. The online reviews stayed positive, but new signups slowed to almost nothing. Dylan called me once a week, always pleasant, always offering to help me through this difficult time, always mentioning the verbal agreement. I stopped answering. My parents invited me to Sunday dinner in April. I went, stupidly hopeful they'd change their minds. My mother had made pot roast, the same recipe Grandpa Harold used to make. The smell hit me the second I walked in, and I almost turned around and left. Dylan was already there, sitting in Grandpa's old chair at the head of the table. My father was opening wine. We ate in near silence for 10 minutes. Then my father set down his fork. Alexandra, we need to talk about this situation with the studio. There's no situation, I said. Dylan is lying about a verbal agreement that never happened. My mother's face went tight. Sweetheart, that's a very harsh thing to say about your brother. It's true. Dylan leaned back in his chair. He was wearing a cashmere sweater I'd never seen before, charcoal gray, expensive. Alex, I'm not lying. You said it. We all heard it. You were emotional. That's understandable. But you said we'd split things once the business got going. I've been patient, I've been supportive, but now I have a family to think about. Jenna and I are trying to buy a house. That's not my problem. It is when you're hoarding family assets, he said, and his voice had that edge again, that quiet sharpness. Grandpa didn't mean for you to keep everything. He meant for us to share. You're being selfish, and honestly, it's embarrassing. My father cleared his throat. Dylan has a point. You've always been difficult about sharing, even as a child. I built that business from nothing. I worked 2 jobs for 2 years. With Grandpa's property, my mother interrupted. Property that should have been divided fairly among his grandchildren. You can't just claim everything because you happen to be his favorite. The word favorite landed like a slap. I wasn't his favorite, I just showed up. Exactly, Dylan said. You manipulated an old man, made him think you cared when really you just wanted the inheritance. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor. I'm leaving. Sit down, my father said. His voice was low, final. The voice he'd used when I was 12 and got caught reading past bedtime. We're not finished. I sat. I always sat. Dylan is willing to be reasonable, my father continued. He's offering to settle this quietly. You transfer 50% ownership, he helps with operations, everybody wins. Or you can fight this in court, spend money you don't have on lawyers, and lose anyway because you have no case. 3 witnesses say you made that agreement. You have none. I have Grandpa's will. A will that says you inherited a warehouse, not a successful business, not equipment, not brand value, just a building. My father picked up his wine glass. Think carefully, Alexandra. This is your family. Don't make this ugly. I left without saying goodbye. That night, I sat in my apartment and cried for the first time since Grandpa's funeral. Not loud, dramatic crying, just silent tears that wouldn't stop. Sitting on my bathroom floor with my back against the tub. I had $4,200 in my personal savings account. Dylan's lawyer had probably cost $5,000 just for the initial filing. My parents had money. Dylan had money from his finance job. I had a studio that was hemorrhaging students because of rumors I couldn't control. I thought about giving up, signing whatever Dylan wanted, walking away. Then I thought about Grandpa Harold's hands across that kitchen table. You finish what you start. I called Patricia Chen the next morning. She was a real estate attorney I'd met during the property transfer process. She'd handled the deed paperwork and had been kind, thorough, professional. I need help, I told her. My brother is trying to steal my business. She listened for 40 minutes without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Do you have the original will? Yes, in a safety deposit box. Good, keep it there. Do you have financial records showing you paid for all renovations and equipment? Yes. Spreadsheets, receipts, bank statements, everything. Better. Do you have documentation of your work history during the construction period? Proof you were working 2 jobs? Pay stubs from both jobs, tax returns. Perfect. Alexandra, your brother doesn't have a case. He has a story. Stories lose to documents. He has 3 witnesses. He has 3 family members willing to lie. That's different. Family testimony in inheritance disputes is weighted differently than neutral witnesses, especially when there's financial motivation. She paused. But I need to be honest with you. This will cost money. Court fees, filing fees, my time. Probably $8,000 to $10,000 if it goes to trial. I closed my eyes. I don't have that. I know. But I also know your grandfather. Harold Thompson was my neighbor for 15 years. He used to bring me tomatoes from his garden every August. He talked about you constantly. My granddaughter who shows up, he'd say. The one who finishes things. Her voice softened. Let me look into something. I'll call you back. She called back 3 hours later. I found something interesting in Harold's estate file. Did you know he set up a small legal fund 6 years ago, specifically designated for defending Alexandra Thompson's property rights? My breath caught. What? $15,000 in a trust account. Instructions say it can only be used for legal fees related to protecting the property at 2847 Industrial Way. He predicted this, Alexandra. He knew someone would try to take it from you. I sat down on my apartment floor, the same spot I'd cried the night before, but this time I wasn't crying. He knew, I whispered. He knew, and he prepared. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to file a response denying all claims. We're going to request a hearing, and we're going to bring every document you have. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Because I have a feeling your family isn't expecting you to fight back. She was right. When Dylan received the response to his petition, he called me within an hour. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Alex, what are you doing? You hired a lawyer? This is insane. You're wasting money on this. Just sign the agreement. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're being ridiculous. You're making the whole family look bad. My mother called next, then my father. I didn't answer either call. 3 weeks later, I received notice of a court hearing date, June 18th at 9:30 a.m., courtroom 3B. Judge Patricia Hendricks presiding. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I went to the studio at 3 a.m. and sat in the empty space, breathing in the faint smell of lavender and cleaning solution. I thought about the first time I'd walked into this building, the pigeons, the water damage, the impossible vision of what it could become. I thought about Luis Herrera, the contractor who'd given me a fair price, Sarah, the student who'd asked if I was okay, Maya, who'd warned me about the rumors. I thought about Grandpa Harold's rough hands across that kitchen table. You've got something your brother doesn't. You finish what you start. At 9:15 a.m., on June 18th, I walked into courtroom 3B wearing my only suit. Gray, from Target, bought for Grandpa's funeral. Patricia Chen met me in the hallway carrying a leather folder thick with documents. You ready? She asked. No. Good. Honest answer. She smiled. Remember, all you have to do is tell the truth. I'll handle the rest. My family was already seated, Dylan in his white shirt, my parents in funeral clothes. They looked polished, prepared, united. They looked like the kind of family judges believed. Judge Hendricks entered at 9:30 exactly. She was in her late 50s, silver hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She looked tired. This is a petition for ownership transfer, she said, scanning the file. Dylan Thompson versus Alexandra Thompson. Mr. Paulson, you're representing the petitioner? Dylan's lawyer stood. Gregory Paulson, mid-40s, expensive suit. Yes, Your Honor. And Ms. Chen, you're representing the respondent? Patricia stood. Yes, Your Honor. All right, Mr. Paulson, make your case. What followed was 20 minutes of Gregory Paulson explaining how Alexandra Thompson had made a verbal agreement with her brother Dylan Thompson to share ownership of the business located at 2847 Industrial Way once it became profitable. He called my father to the stand first. My father swore on the Bible. He sat straight, hands folded, and lied with perfect clarity. Yes, I heard Alexandra tell Dylan they would share the business. It was at Harold's funeral, in the reception area of the funeral home, February 14th. She was emotional but very clear. She said, "Don't worry, Dylan, we'll split this once I get it running." I remember because I thought it was generous of her. Patricia didn't cross-examine, just nodded. My mother went next. Same story, same conviction, same lie. Alexandra has always been sensitive, my mother added. She gets overwhelmed easily. I think she genuinely forgot she made that promise. She's not a liar, she's just not good with stress. Dylan testified last. He was calm, reasonable, sympathetic. I love my sister, he said. I'm proud of what she's built. But we had an agreement, and she's backing out now that there's money involved. I've tried to resolve this privately, but she won't return my calls. I don't want to fight. I just want what's fair. Judge Hendricks looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at me. Ms. Thompson, you'll have your turn. Patricia stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call Alexandra Thompson to testify. I walked to the stand. My legs felt disconnected from my body. I swore on the Bible, sat down, and looked at Patricia. Alexandra, did you make a verbal agreement with your brother to share ownership of Eastlight Yoga? No. Were you at your grandfather's funeral on February 14th? Yes. Did you speak to Dylan that day? Barely. He left right after the service. I stayed to help clean up. Did your parents hear you make any promises to Dylan that day? No, because I didn't make any. Patricia walked back to her table and picked up a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence. The next 30 minutes were a blur. Patricia presented my work schedules from the bookstore and Meridian Solutions, showing I worked 2 jobs simultaneously for 2 years. Receipts for building materials, equipment, yoga mats, mirrors, paint, totaling $34,000 over 8 months, all in my name. Bank statements showing deposits from my paychecks and withdrawals for studio expenses. Before and after photos of the warehouse renovation. My online yoga certification, dated 3 years prior, revenue spreadsheets showing the studio's growth from $800 in month 1 to $8,000 in month 36. All my work, all my marketing, all my teaching. Your Honor, Patricia said, Alexandra Thompson built this business entirely with her own labor and capital. Her brother contributed $0 and 0 hours. There is no written agreement. There is no email trail. There is no text message. There is only the testimony of 3 family members who stand to gain financially if this petition succeeds. Judge Hendricks looked at the documents. Then she looked at Dylan. Mr. Thompson, did you contribute any money to the renovation or operation of this business? Dylan hesitated. No, but did you work on the renovations? No, but we had an agreement. Did you teach any classes, handle any marketing, pay any bills? No, Your Honor, but that's because Alexandra was handling it while the business was small. Once it became profitable, we were supposed to partner, based on a conversation you claim happened at a funeral that no one else can corroborate except your parents, who also stand to benefit from you acquiring this asset. Dylan's face went red. They're not lying. I didn't say they were lying. I said they're the only witnesses and they're financially motivated. That's a fact. Judge Hendricks looked at my father. Mr. Thompson, you testified that you heard this conversation on February 14th at the funeral home. What time? My father blinked. I'm sorry? What time did this conversation occur? I don't recall the exact time. Morning? Afternoon? Evening? Afternoon, I believe. Around 2 p.m. maybe. Patricia stood. Your Honor, may I submit one more piece of evidence? Go ahead. Patricia handed a document to the judge, then to Gregory Paulson. This is a copy of the funeral home's security log. Harold Thompson's service ended at 1:15 p.m. on February 14th. The family reception area was vacated by 1:45 p.m. Dylan Thompson signed out of the guest book at 1:22 p.m. and did not return. Alexandra Thompson stayed until 3:30 p.m., helping the funeral director clean up. There were 4 witnesses to her presence: the director, 2 staff members, and a family friend. Dylan was not present at 2 p.m. Neither were Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. They left at 1:40 p.m. The courtroom went silent. Dylan's lawyer shuffled papers. My father's face went pale. My mother looked at Dylan, then at my father, then down at her hands. Judge Hendricks set the document down slowly. So the conversation that allegedly occurred at 2 p.m. on February 14th could not have occurred because the petitioner was not present at that location at that time. Your Honor, Gregory Paulson said, standing quickly, perhaps my clients were mistaken about the exact date or time. Perhaps, Judge Hendricks said, your clients fabricated this entire story. Dylan stood up. That's not. We didn't. Sit down, Mr. Thompson. He sat. Patricia pulled out another folder. Your Honor, there's more. I have here a recorded phone call from May 3rd of this year. Alexandra Thompson's phone provider confirmed the recording is authentic and unedited. In this call, Dylan Thompson explicitly admits that he never contributed to the business and never had a written agreement. He also threatens Alexandra with a prolonged legal battle designed to drain her resources if she doesn't comply. Would you like to hear it? Judge Hendricks nodded. Play it. The courtroom speakers crackled to life, Dylan's voice clear and cold. Alex, you know you can't afford to fight this. Mom and Dad will back me up. We'll drag this out for years. You'll lose students, lose money, lose everything. Just sign the agreement. Give me half, or I'll make sure you end up with nothing. My voice on the recording, shaking. This is extortion. Dylan's laugh. This is family. The recording ended. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear someone's watch ticking 3 rows behind me. Judge Hendricks removed her glasses. She looked at Dylan for a long time. Then she looked at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, you submitted affidavits claiming your daughter is emotionally unstable and incapable of managing a business. Yet the evidence shows she worked 2 jobs simultaneously, saved $11,400, renovated a derelict warehouse, obtained professional certification, and grew a business from $0 to $8,000 monthly revenue in 3 years. All while your son contributed nothing and is now attempting to take half of what she built through fraudulent testimony. She paused. Do you have anything to say? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. We thought Dylan deserved something too. This isn't about what anyone deserves. This is about what actually happened. And what happened is that your daughter built a business, and your son is trying to steal it. Judge Hendricks looked at Dylan. Mr. Thompson, your petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to pay Ms. Thompson's legal fees in the amount of $9,200. You have 60 days. If you contact her again regarding ownership of this business, she has grounds for a restraining order and harassment charges. Dylan's face went from red to white. Your Honor, that's not... We're done. This case is closed. She banged her gavel once. Miss Thompson, I'm sorry you had to go through this. Your grandfather would be proud of you. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Patricia touched my shoulder. Let's go. We walked out of the courtroom. My family stayed seated. I didn't look back. In the hallway, Patricia hugged me quickly. You did it. You did it, I said. How did you get that security log? I called the funeral home, asked if they kept records. They did, she smiled. Always verify testimony. That's rule 1. And the recording? You recorded it. You sent it to me 2 weeks ago. Don't you remember? I did remember. Dylan had called me at 11 p.m., drunk and angry. I'd hit record on instinct. I'd forgotten I'd sent it to Patricia. Thank you, I whispered. Thank your grandfather. He's the one who set up the legal fund. He knew Alexandra. He knew exactly what they'd do. I drove back to the studio and taught my 2 p.m. class. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. I just taught. Moved bodies through poses, played soft music, breathed. Sarah stayed afterward. You seem different today, she said. Lighter? I feel lighter, I told her. I didn't hear from Dylan for 3 weeks. Then a cashier's check arrived in the mail for $9,200. No note, just the check. My parents called once. I didn't answer. They left a voicemail saying they'd overreacted and hoped we could move past this. I deleted it. 2 months later, I found out Dylan had lost his job. His wife Jenna filed for separation. My mother called to tell me, crying, saying I should be the bigger person and forgive him. I didn't call back. Instead, I went to Grandpa Harold's grave on a Sunday morning in August. Sycamore Ridge Cemetery, Section C, Plot 47. I brought tomatoes from the farmer's market, the kind he used to grow. I sat on the grass next to his headstone and told him everything. You knew, I said. You knew they'd try this. You prepared for it. You saved me. The wind moved through the trees, warm, quiet. I'm finishing what I started, Grandpa, just like you said. 6 months later, East Light Yoga had 65 regular students. I hired a third instructor. I started offering teacher training certifications. I bought a second delivery truck, a 2015 model with only 60,000 miles. I moved to a new apartment on the north side of town, a one-bedroom with hardwood floors and a balcony that faced east. I got a cat. I named her Pumpkin. Every Sunday, I still go to the studio early, before anyone arrives. I sit in the empty space with the morning light coming through those huge industrial windows, and I breathe. I think about the girl who worked 2 jobs and saved every dollar. The girl who painted walls at midnight and installed mirrors herself. The girl who believed her family when they said she was too fragile, too overwhelmed, too incapable. That girl didn't need permission to be strong. She just needed someone to stop telling her she wasn't. If you're watching this, and someone in your life keeps telling you that you're too much or not enough, that you owe them something you built, that you should share what you earned with people who never showed up, type, "I showed up" in the comments. Or, if you're still deciding whether to fight back or walk away, type, "I'm deciding." Both are valid. Both take courage. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. I look at Pumpkin sleeping in the sun on my balcony. I look at the photo on my desk, me and Grandpa Harold in his garden, my arms full of tomatoes, both of us laughing. The snow is falling outside, soft, quiet, covering everything in white. I'm watching it from the warm side of the glass, holding my coffee, wearing the oversized flannel shirt I took from Grandpa's closet after he died. It still smells like rosemary and old wood. I finish what I start.